My name is Robert Mitchell, and I'm 62 years old. I've worked as a janitor at Riverside Elementary School for 35 years, cleaning classrooms and fixing broken things with my worn hands. My wife died when my daughter was just 12, and since then, it's been just me and my little girl against the world. I never thought my own daughter would be the one to break my heart. For 25 years, I lived in the same small house on Maple Street in the quiet town of Cedar Falls. It wasn't much to look at. The paint was peeling, the roof leaked when it rained hard, and the kitchen faucet dripped no matter how many times I tried to fix it. But it was home. More importantly, it was the house where I raised my daughter Jessica after her mother passed away from cancer. Jessica was everything to me. When she was little, she used to wait for me by the front window every evening, pressing her tiny hands against the glass until she saw my old truck pulling into the driveway. She'd run to the door and throw her arms around my legs, telling me about her day at school while I was still covered in dust from mopping floors and emptying trash cans. Those were the good days. The days when Jessica looked at me like I was her hero, not just some old man who couldn't give her the fancy things her friends had. As Jessica grew older, things started to change. She began to notice that other kids had newer clothes, bigger houses, and parents who drove cars that didn't make strange noises when they started. She'd come home from school quiet and moody, especially after spending time at her friends' houses in the nicer parts of town. "Dad, why can't we live somewhere better?" she asked me one day when she was 16. We were eating dinner at our small kitchen table, the same one I'd bought at a garage sale 15 years earlier. "Honey, this house has everything we need," I told her, trying to keep my voice gentle. "We have a roof over our heads, food on the table, and each other." Jessica rolled her eyes. "But look at this place. The wallpaper is falling off, the carpet is stained, and my friends think it's weird that we don't have a dishwasher." I felt a pain in my chest that had nothing to do with the long hours I spent pushing a mop around school hallways. "Jessica, I work hard to give you everything I can. Maybe it's not fancy, but it's honest work, and this house is filled with love. Love doesn't pay for new clothes or a car that actually works," she snapped back, pushing her plate away. That night, I lay in bed staring at the water stain on the ceiling, wondering if I'd failed as a father. Maybe Jessica was right. Maybe love wasn't enough. When Jessica turned 18, she got a job at the local grocery store while she went to community college. I was proud of her for working hard, but I noticed she started spending more time with her coworker friends and less time at home. She'd come in late, barely say hello, and go straight to her room. "I'm saving money to get my own place," she announced one evening, not even looking up from her phone. My heart sank. "But honey, you don't need to move out. This is your home." "This isn't a home, Dad. It's just a house where poor people live." Her words hit me like a punch to the stomach. I'd worked 2 jobs for years to make sure she never went without food or clothes. I'd given up everything: vacations, new clothes for myself, even fixing my truck properly to make sure she had what she needed for school. But apparently, it wasn't enough. I wasn't enough. Over the next 2 years, Jessica became more and more distant. She'd criticize everything about our house, our neighborhood, and especially about my job. She seemed embarrassed that her father was just a janitor, and she made sure I knew it. "My friend Amy's dad is a doctor," she'd say, "and Lisa's dad owns 3 restaurants." What do I tell people when they ask what my dad does? That he cleans toilets for a living? Each comment felt like a knife twisting in my heart, but I tried to stay patient. I kept telling myself that she was young and would understand someday how hard I'd worked to take care of her. Everything changed on a Tuesday morning in March. I was getting ready for work, making coffee in our old kitchen, when Jessica came downstairs with 2 big suitcases. "I found an apartment," she said, not even looking at me. "I'm moving out today." I set down my coffee cup, my hand shaking a little. "Today? But honey, we should talk about this." "There's nothing to talk about, Dad. I can't live like this anymore. I can't keep pretending that this is okay." She gestured around the kitchen with disgust. "Look at this place. The refrigerator is older than me, the stove only works on 2 burners, and I'm embarrassed to bring anyone here." "Jessica, please. I know the house isn't perfect, but we can work together to fix it up. I've been saving some money." "With what money, Dad?" she interrupted. "You make barely enough to keep this dump from falling down completely. I'm 20 years old, and I deserve better than this." I felt tears burning behind my eyes, but I tried to keep my voice steady. "Honey, you'll always be welcome here. This will always be your home." Jessica picked up her suitcases and headed for the door. "No, Dad. This was never really a home. It was just a place where I had to live because I didn't have any other choice." Now I do." She walked out the front door and didn't even look back. I stood in that empty kitchen for a long time, listening to the familiar sounds of the old house, the refrigerator humming, the clock ticking on the wall, the floorboards creaking. For the first time in 25 years, those sounds didn't feel comforting. They just felt lonely. The next few months were the hardest of my life. I'd come home from work to an empty house and eat dinner by myself at the kitchen table. I'd listen for Jessica's car in the driveway or wait for her key in the front door, but she never came. I tried calling her a few times, but she rarely answered. When she did, our conversations were short and cold. She'd tell me she was busy with work or school, and that she'd call me later, but she never did. I started buying a lottery ticket every week at Murphy's Corner Store, the same place I'd been shopping for groceries for 20 years. Old Murphy always asked about Jessica, and I'd smile and tell him she was doing well, even though my heart was breaking. "Maybe this will be your lucky week, Robert," Murphy would say as he handed me my ticket. "Maybe," I'd reply, but I never really believed it. Every Tuesday morning, I'd check my numbers while drinking coffee in my quiet kitchen. I'd scratch off the silver coating with a penny, see that I hadn't won anything, and throw the ticket in the trash. It became a routine that gave me something to hope for, even if it was a tiny hope. One Tuesday in September, exactly 6 months after Jessica moved out, something different happened. I was running late for work because my truck had trouble starting, so I grabbed my lottery ticket from the kitchen counter and stuffed it in my shirt pocket without checking it. That day at work was particularly hard. The school's heating system was acting up, and I had to crawl around in the basement trying to fix it. By the time I got home, I was exhausted and dirty. I took a shower, heated up a can of soup for dinner, and sat down at the kitchen table. That's when I remembered the lottery ticket in my shirt pocket. I pulled it out, got my penny from the drawer, and started scratching off the numbers. The first number matched, then the second. My heart started beating faster as I scratched off the third number. It matched too. My hands were shaking as I scratched off the fourth number. When I saw it matched, I couldn't breathe. The fifth number, match. The sixth number, match. I stared at the ticket for a long time, sure I was making a mistake. I got up and turned on every light in the kitchen, then sat back down and looked at the ticket again. I counted the numbers 3 times, checking them against the winning numbers printed at the top. All 6 numbers matched perfectly. I had won $10 million. I sat in that kitchen chair for 2 hours, just staring at the ticket. $10 million. More money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes. More money than Jessica could ever dream of having. For a moment, I felt a rush of joy thinking about how I could help Jessica now. I could buy her a beautiful house, pay for her college completely, make sure she never had to worry about money again. Maybe now she'd see that her old dad wasn't such a failure after all. But then I remembered how she'd looked at me the day she moved out. The disgust in her voice when she talked about our home. The way she'd said this place was just somewhere she had to live because she didn't have any other choice. I looked down at the lottery ticket in my hands, and that's when I noticed something that made my blood run cold. The ticket wasn't in my name. When I bought it at Murphy's store that Tuesday morning, I'd been in such a hurry that I hadn't paid attention to what I was doing. Murphy had asked me the same question he always asked, "You want this ticket in your name or your daughter's name for luck?" Usually I said my own name, but that morning I'd been thinking about Jessica. I'd been missing her so much and hoping she might call. Without really thinking about it, I'd said Jessica Mitchell. Murphy had printed Jessica's name on the ticket, just like I'd asked. The winning lottery ticket worth $10 million legally belonged to my daughter. The same daughter who had called our home a dump and said she was embarrassed of me. The same daughter who hadn't spoken to me in 2 months. I sat in that quiet kitchen, holding a piece of paper that could change everything, and realized that Jessica had no idea she'd just become a millionaire. What happened next would test everything I thought I knew about right and wrong, about love and family, and about what people really deserve. But first, I had to decide what kind of man I really was. The next morning, I woke up before dawn and made coffee with hands that hadn't stopped shaking since the night before. The lottery ticket sat on the kitchen table where I'd left it, Jessica's name printed clearly at the top in Murphy's neat handwriting. I picked up the phone 3 different times to call her, and 3 different times I put it back down. Part of me, the part that still loved her more than anything in the world, wanted to call her immediately and tell her the good news. I imagined her screaming with joy, maybe even coming over to celebrate with her old dad. But another part of me, a part that had been growing stronger over the past 6 months, whispered something else. What if I called her, and she was only excited about the money? What if she pretended to love me again just because I was the one who told her about the ticket? I decided to wait and think about it more. That afternoon, I was mopping the hallway at school when my phone rang. I almost dropped the mop when I saw Jessica's name on the screen. She hadn't called me in 2 months. "Hi honey," I answered, my heart pounding. "Dad, I need to ask you something." Her voice was different than usual, not warm but not cold either, just businesslike. "Of course, sweetheart. What is it? Do you still buy those stupid lottery tickets every week?" My mouth went dry. "Sometimes." "Why?" "Because I was at Murphy's store yesterday, and he said something weird. He said he hoped the lottery ticket he made out in my name would bring me good luck, but I never asked him to put my name on a ticket." My heart was beating so hard I was sure she could hear it through the phone. "Oh, that. Sometimes when I buy a ticket, Murphy asks if I want it in my name or yours for luck. I guess I said yours that week." "Well, did you check if it won anything?" she asked. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. This was the moment that would change everything. "No honey, I forgot all about it. Why don't you come over and we can check it together?" There was a pause. "I can't come over tonight. I'm busy. Just check it yourself and let me know." The line went dead. I stood in that empty school hallway, holding my phone and realizing that Jessica hadn't called because she missed me or wanted to see me. She'd called because Murphy had mentioned a lottery ticket, and she wanted to know if she'd won any money. She didn't even want to check it with me. She just wanted me to do the work and report back. That night, I sat at my kitchen table and made a decision that would haunt both of us for months to come. Instead of calling Jessica back, I drove to 3 different stores in the next town over. At each store, I bought several scratch-off tickets. I scratched them all off until I found 3 that were small winners, one for $50, one for $100, and one for $20. Then I called Jessica. "Hey honey, I checked those tickets," I said, trying to keep my voice normal. "Good news, you won some money." "Really? How much?" The excitement in her voice was unmistakable. "Well, let's see. You won $50 on one, $100 on another, and $20 on the third one. So $170 total." There was a long silence. "That's it? $170? My heart sank at the disappointment in her voice. "I know it's not a fortune, honey, but it's still pretty lucky." "Dad, $170 isn't going to change my life. I was hoping for something bigger." "I'm sorry, sweetheart. But hey, it's free money, right?" "Yeah, I guess. Look, can you just cash the tickets and mail me a check? I'm really busy with work and stuff." She didn't even want to see me to collect her winnings. "Of course, honey, I'll mail it tomorrow." After she hung up, I stared at the real lottery ticket still sitting on my table. The ticket worth $10 million. The ticket with her name on it that she thought was only worth $170. For the first time in 6 months, I smiled. But what I did next would set in motion a chain of events that would shock us both. Because sometimes, when people show you who they really are, the kindest thing you can do is believe them. And Jessica was about to show me exactly who she'd become. 3 days later, my phone rang at 6 a.m. I was already up, drinking coffee and getting ready for work, but I was surprised to hear from Jessica so early. "Dad, something amazing happened," she said, her voice bubbling with excitement. "What is it, honey?" "I won the lottery, a real lottery, not just scratch-offs. I won $10 million. My coffee cup froze halfway to my lips. "What do you mean? I thought you only won $170 on those tickets." "No, not those tickets. A different one. I bought a ticket last week with some friends from work, and we won." "Well, technically I won because I'm the one who bought it, but we're all going to split it." My mind was racing. Jessica thought she'd won the lottery with a different ticket. She had no idea that the real winning ticket, the one worth $10 million, was still sitting in my kitchen drawer. "That's incredible, sweetheart," I managed to say. "Are you sure?" "I'm positive. I checked the numbers 5 times, and I already called the lottery office. I have to go there tomorrow to claim the prize." I felt like I was in a dream. "Honey, can I ask you something? What are you going to do with all that money?" Jessica laughed, and for a moment she sounded like the little girl who used to wait for me by the window. "Dad, I'm going to buy a beautiful house in Sunset Ridge Estates. You know, that fancy neighborhood with the big houses and the golf course. And I'm going to get a new car, and travel, and finally live the life I deserve." "That sounds wonderful," I said quietly. "And, what about the old house? What about me?" There was a pause that felt like it lasted forever. "Well, Dad, you can keep living in that old house if you want. But honestly, now that I'm going to be rich, I think it's time for both of us to move on with our lives. I'm 20 years old, and I need to start thinking about my future. My real future." Something cold settled in my chest. What do you mean? I mean I can't keep worrying about you and that falling down house forever. You're still young enough to take care of yourself, and now I can finally focus on building the kind of life I've always wanted. But Jessica, I thought maybe, with all this money, we could spend more time together. Maybe I could help you pick out a house, or we could take a trip somewhere. Jessica's voice got sharp, the way it did when she was annoyed. Dad, no offense, but I don't think you'd fit in with the kind of life I'm going to have now. I'm going to be meeting different kinds of people, going to nice places, doing things that, well, that you wouldn't understand. Each word felt like a slap across my face. I see. Look, Dad, I don't mean to hurt your feelings, but let's be realistic. You're a janitor who lives in a rundown house in the worst part of town. I'm about to be a millionaire. We're going to be living in different worlds now. Different worlds, I repeated slowly. Exactly. But hey, I'll still call you sometimes, okay? And maybe for holidays or something, we can get together. But Dad, I need you to understand that my life is about to change completely. After she hung up, I sat in my quiet kitchen for a long time. Then I walked to the drawer where I'd hidden the real lottery ticket and pulled it out. Jessica's name was still printed clearly at the top. My daughter had just told me she was ashamed of me. She'd told me I wouldn't fit into her new life. She'd made it clear that becoming rich meant leaving her father behind. But Jessica didn't know the truth. She didn't know that her winning ticket was probably a fake, or a mistake, or wishful thinking. She didn't know that the real winning ticket, worth $10 million, was in her father's kitchen drawer, the father she was planning to abandon. I made a decision that night that would change everything. If Jessica wanted to live in a different world than her poor, embarrassing father, then that's exactly what she would get. But she was about to learn that some worlds aren't as easy to live in as others, and some people aren't as easy to throw away. The next morning, I couldn't eat breakfast. My stomach was twisted in knots as I kept thinking about Jessica's phone call. She truly believed she had won $10 million with some fake ticket, and she was planning to use that imaginary money as an excuse to cut me out of her life completely. I called in sick to work for the first time in 5 years. I couldn't concentrate on mopping floors when my whole world was falling apart. Instead, I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the real lottery ticket with Jessica's name on it, trying to figure out what kind of man I wanted to be. The phone rang around noon. It was Jessica, but this time her voice sounded different. Confused, upset. Dad, something weird happened at the lottery office, she said. My heart started pounding. What do you mean? Well, I went there with my ticket to claim my prize, and they said the ticket is fake. Or maybe I read the numbers wrong. I don't know what happened, but they told me I didn't win anything. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. Oh honey, I'm so sorry. Are you sure you had the right numbers? I thought I did. I was so sure. Her voice cracked a little. Dad, I already told everyone at work. I already started looking at houses online. I feel so stupid. For a moment, my heart broke for her. She sounded like the little girl who used to cry when she scraped her knee, and all I wanted to do was make it better. But then I remembered what she'd said about not fitting into her new life, about living in different worlds, about being too embarrassed to spend time with her janitor father. It's okay, sweetie, I said gently. These things happen. Maybe it's for the best. For the best? Jessica's voice got sharp again. Dad, do you have any idea what it's like to think you're finally going to escape this terrible life, and then find out it was all a mistake? Terrible life? I repeated. Yes, terrible. Do you know what it's like to be 20 years old and still have people ask me why I'm living in some tiny apartment instead of having my own house? Do you know what it's like to drive a car that breaks down every other week? Dad, I can't keep living like this forever. Jessica, you have a job, you're healthy, you have people who love you. Love doesn't pay the bills, Dad. Love doesn't get me a better car or a nice house or the kind of life my friends have. I felt that familiar pain in my chest. So what are you going to do now? There was a long pause. I don't know. Go back to my regular life, I guess. Keep working at the grocery store and living in my crummy apartment and pretending like I'm happy. Honey, there's nothing wrong with working hard and living simply. Easy for you to say, Dad. You've given up on having a better life. But I haven't. I'm still young, and I'm not going to end up like. She stopped talking. Like what, Jessica? Nothing. I didn't mean anything. But I knew what she'd been about to say. She didn't want to end up like me. Poor. Working a job that people looked down on. Living in a house that was falling apart. I understand, I said quietly. After she hung up, I made a decision. I walked to my bedroom and pulled out the small metal box where I kept important papers. Inside was the deed to my house, my insurance papers, and now the lottery ticket that could change everything. I had a plan. Over the next week, I did something I'd never done before. I started spending money I didn't have. I went to the bank and took out a loan using my house as collateral. It wasn't a big loan, just $5,000, but it was more money than I'd ever borrowed in my life. With that money, I went shopping. Not for myself, but for my house. I bought new paint for every room. I bought a new refrigerator and a new stove. I bought new curtains and a new kitchen table. I even hired a man to fix the roof that had been leaking for 3 years. Every day after work, I'd come home and paint or clean or fix something. My back ached and my hands were covered in cuts and scrapes, but slowly, my little house started to look different. Better. Like a real home instead of just a place where a poor man lived. The neighbors started to notice. Mrs. Patterson from next door came over one evening while I was painting the front porch. "Robert, the house looks wonderful," she said. "What's the special occasion?" "No special occasion," I told her. "I just decided it was time to fix things up." "Well, it's about time," she said with a smile. "This place has good bones. It just needed some love." After 2 weeks of hard work, my house looked better than it had in 20 years. The walls were bright white, the kitchen appliances actually worked, and everything was clean and organized. It wasn't fancy, but it was comfortable and welcoming. That's when I called Jessica. "Hi honey, how are you feeling?" I asked. "Better, I guess," she said. "I'm trying not to think about the whole lottery thing. It's just too depressing." "I understand. Hey, I was wondering if you'd like to come over for dinner this weekend. I haven't seen you in almost 8 months. Jessica was quiet for a moment. "Dad, I told you, I'm trying to move on with my life. Going back to that old house just makes me feel sad." "What if I told you the house has changed?" "What do you mean? Why don't you come see for yourself? I'll cook your favorite meal, spaghetti and meatballs, just like when you were little." Jessica sighed. "Dad, I really don't think." "Please, Jessica, just one dinner. If you don't like what you see, I promise I won't ask again." Another long pause. "Fine, but I can only stay for an hour. I have plans later." Saturday evening, I watched through the front window as Jessica's car pulled into the driveway. I'd spent the whole day cleaning and cooking, making sure everything was perfect. The smell of garlic and tomato sauce filled the air, and the house looked warm and inviting under the new lights I'd installed. When Jessica knocked on the front door, I took a deep breath and opened it. Her mouth fell open. "Dad, what did you do?" She walked slowly through the front door, looking around at the freshly painted walls, the new furniture, the clean carpets. Everything was different from the rundown house she remembered. "I fixed it up a little," I said, trying to sound casual. Jessica walked into the kitchen and stopped. The old, broken appliances were gone, replaced by new ones that gleamed under the bright lights. The table was set with my best dishes, the ones I'd bought years ago but never used. "Dad, this is incredible. How did you afford all this?" I'd been preparing for this question. "I took out a small loan. I decided you were right, the house needed some work." Jessica sat down at the new kitchen table, running her hands over the smooth surface. "It looks so different. It actually feels like a real home now." "It always was a real home, honey. Maybe it just needed a little love to show it." We ate dinner together for the first time in 8 months. Jessica seemed more relaxed than she'd been in years, asking me about the renovations and complimenting the food. For a while, it felt like old times, but then she said something that changed everything. "Dad, this is really nice, but I have to ask you something. Where did you really get the money for all this?" I looked up from my plate. "I told you, I took out a loan." "A loan for how much? This couldn't have been cheap." "Jessica, does it matter? I'm happy with how it turned out." She put down her fork and stared at me. "Dad, you make maybe $30,000 a year as a janitor. No bank is going to give you a loan big enough to completely renovate a house. So where did the money come from?" My heart started beating faster. "Honey, why don't we just enjoy our dinner? Did you win money gambling? Did you borrow money from someone dangerous?" "Dad, I need to know what's going on." I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the yard I'd been working so hard to improve. "Jessica, what if I told you that sometimes good things happen to good people? What's that supposed to mean?" I turned around and looked at my daughter. She was sitting at my new table, in my renovated house, demanding to know how her father could possibly afford to improve his life. It was the same daughter who told me I wouldn't fit into her world. The same daughter who'd been embarrassed of where we lived. "It means that maybe your old dad isn't as hopeless as you thought." Jessica's eyes narrowed. "Dad, you're scaring me. Did you do something illegal?" Illegal? No, Jessica, I didn't do anything illegal. Then how? Maybe, I said quietly, I'm just better at managing money than you gave me credit for. Jessica stared at me for a long moment. Then she said something that made my blood run cold. You know what, Dad? I don't really care where you got the money. This house looks great, and I'm happy for you, but it doesn't change anything between us. What do you mean? I mean that just because you fixed up this old house doesn't mean I want to come back and live here. I'm still planning to build my own life, away from this neighborhood and everything that reminds me of being poor. I felt like she'd slapped me. Even though the house is nice now, Dad, it's not about the house. It's about the life that goes with it. You're still a janitor. This is still the same neighborhood. I'm still the girl whose father cleans toilets for a living. Jessica stood up and grabbed her purse. Thanks for dinner. The house really does look nice, but I should go. She walked to the front door, then turned back. Dad, I hope you understand that I'm not trying to hurt you. I just need to think about my future, and my future isn't here. After she left, I sat alone in my beautiful, renovated kitchen. I'd spent $5,000 and weeks of hard work trying to show Jessica that our home could be something special. I'd hoped that maybe, if the house was nicer, she might want to spend time here again. But it hadn't worked. The house could be perfect, and it still wouldn't be good enough for Jessica. I still wouldn't be good enough for Jessica. I walked to my bedroom and pulled out the metal box again. The lottery ticket was still there, Jessica's name printed clearly at the top. $10 million that legally belonged to the daughter who was ashamed of me. That night, I made another decision. If Jessica wanted to build a life away from everything that reminded her of being poor, then I was going to help her do exactly that. But not in the way she expected. The next Monday, I did something that shocked everyone who knew me. I called my boss at the school and gave my notice. Robert, you can't be serious, Mr. Williams said. You've been here for 35 years. What are you going to do? I'm going to try something different, I told him. But what about your pension? What about health insurance? Robert, you're 62 years old. This isn't the time to be making big changes. I looked around at the school hallway I'd mopped thousands of times. Maybe it's exactly the right time. That afternoon, I drove to the lottery office in the state capital. It was a 3-hour drive, but I wanted to handle this in person. I walked up to the counter and handed them the winning ticket. I'd like to claim this prize, I said. The woman behind the counter looked at the ticket and her eyes went wide. Sir, this is a $10 million winner. Are you Jessica Mitchell? I took a deep breath. No, but Jessica Mitchell is my daughter, and this ticket was purchased as a gift for her. I'm here to claim it on her behalf. I'm sorry, sir, but the ticket is in her name. She'll need to claim it herself, or you'll need a notary's letter giving you permission to claim it for her. I smiled. I understand. Let me ask you something else. If Jessica Mitchell wanted to claim this ticket, what would she need to do? The woman explained the process. Jessica would need to bring identification, fill out some forms, and choose whether she wanted the money in a lump sum or spread out over 20 years. And how long does the whole process take? I asked. Usually about 2 weeks from the time we receive all the paperwork. I thanked the woman and drove home. On the way, I stopped at an office supply store and bought a large envelope, some fancy stationery, and a stamp. That evening, I sat at my new kitchen table and wrote a letter that would change both of our lives forever. Dear Jessica, I wrote, I have something that belongs to you, but I wasn't ready to send the letter yet, because first, I wanted to see what Jessica would do when she thought she was on her own. I wanted to see who she really was when she didn't think her father was watching. And I wanted her to understand what it felt like to need someone who wasn't there. Over the next 2 weeks, I watched Jessica from a distance. I drove by her apartment building. I sat in my car outside the grocery store where she worked. I wasn't stalking her, I was studying her. What I saw broke my heart all over again. Jessica was struggling more than I'd realized. Her car broke down twice, and I watched her call different people, trying to find someone to help her. No one came. She had to take the bus to work, which meant she was late several days in a row. I saw her at the laundromat, washing her clothes by hand because the machines were broken and she couldn't afford to go anywhere else. I saw her buying the cheapest food at the grocery store, counting out change to make sure she had enough money. One evening, I followed her to a fancy restaurant in the rich part of town. She went inside, but instead of eating, she applied for a job as a waitress. Through the window, I watched the manager look her up and down, then shake his head and send her away. Jessica sat in her car in that restaurant parking lot for 20 minutes, crying. Part of me wanted to run to her, to tell her everything was going to be okay, to give her the lottery ticket and make all her problems disappear. But another part of me, the part that remembered her saying I wouldn't fit into her world, held me back. After 2 weeks of watching Jessica struggle, I finally sent the letter. But what I wrote in that letter would start a chain of events that would test everything we thought we knew about each other. Because sometimes, the people we love the most are the ones who hurt us the deepest. And sometimes, the only way to save someone is to let them fall. Jessica called me 3 days later, and she was screaming.